Electrical gadgets dumped on the street one day after a new recycling scheme took effect. China and Hong Kong stocks fall amid the escalating US-China trade war. And army on the streets as Zimbabwe awaits election results.
Good evening. A new law which came into effect yesterday means customers who buy certain types of electrical appliances can have their old ones removed for free. Still, not everyone's happy with the arrangement, as collection could take days after a new purchase has been made. A stroll around Sai Kung, and it's easy to see electrical appliances still being dumped at roadside rubbish collection points. It's not where the government wants them, given a new recycling program was put in place yesterday. By law, retailers must help a customer arrange a licensed recycler to remove old machines they want replaced, as long as it's one of 8 types of regulated equipment such as televisions, air conditioners and washing machines. Old items won't necessarily be removed on the day new appliances are delivered, though. A recycler has pledged for the collection to take place 3 days after a transaction, an arrangement known as T+3.
The chosen operators have already beefed up their logistic capacity. So as said, they pledged that T+3 free removal service could be 100% catered for.
Alba Integrated Waste Solutions Hong Kong Limited is one of 3 licensed recyclers under the scheme. In 2015, it won a government contract to design, build and run a recycling facility in Tuen Mun to treat e-waste. The amount involved is $550 million. Depending on the volume of waste treated, the recycler could also receive $200 million a year. Although it has 5 collection centres around town, some retailers complain of the inconvenience.
There are certain things we've got to arrange in terms of ensuring that we have necessary vehicles, drivers and also the fleet arrangements to make that possible. We have 3 days to arrange it, and sometimes we actually do it in a lesser time if we're able to.
Hong Kong produces around 70,000 tons of this e-waste every year. The Alba IWS company in Hong Kong, now they can only take care of 42% of the total waste. The rest, who should take care of it?
He called for more subsidies for the other 2 licensed recyclers who are unable to collect all 8 classes of regulated appliances.
Stock markets tanked in the region after the United States sought to escalate its trade war with China. That's after the Trump administration in Washington confirmed media reports that it plans to raise tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports to 25% from an earlier proposal of 10%. Beijing is urging Washington to return to rationality. Jeff Tang reports.
US President Donald Trump continues to show that he is a man who walks his talk, no matter how controversial it may be. Barely a day after Bloomberg reported Trump plans to ramp up proposed tariffs on an extra $200 billion of Chinese imports from 10 to 25%, his administration confirmed it. US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer said the move came because Beijing has refused to meet Washington's demands and has imposed retaliatory tariffs on American goods. Lighthizer added in a statement that the possible increase in levies are aimed at providing the US with additional options to encourage China to change its harmful policies and behavior and adopt policies that will lead to fairer markets and prosperity for all of our citizens. In Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang urged the United States to return to rationality. He also reiterated that Washington's efforts at blackmail would fail. Since the trade war broke out last month, Beijing has gone toe-to-toe with Washington with tit-for-tat tariff hikes. But China has yet to respond this time because it is soon running out of US imports to tax. Beijing and Washington haven't spoken formally for weeks, following Trump's demands that China make fundamental changes to its policies on intellectual property protection, technology transfers, and subsidies for high-tech industries. Trump administration officials said the president remains open to communication with Beijing. The two sides are also said to be discussing whether a fruitful negotiation is possible through informal conversations. In Hong Kong, investors reacted nervously as Beijing insisted that it will not give in to what it labelled as bullying tactics. The Hang Seng Index slumped 626 points to 27,714. Mainland stocks also retreated after the latest US tariff threat, while investor confidence was further shaken by signs of slowing domestic growth. The Shanghai Composite Index lost 2% in heavy trading.
The US Congress is sending President Donald Trump legislation that would force technology companies to disclose if they allowed countries like China and Russia to examine the inner workings of software sold to the US military. The legislation was drafted after an investigation last year found software makers allowed a Russian defense agency to hunt for vulnerabilities in software used by some agencies of the US government, including the Pentagon and intelligence services. US senators also held a hearing on Capitol Hill about the use of social media to undermine American interests both at home and abroad.
These active measures have two things in common. First, they're effective, and second, they're cheap. For just pennies on the dollar, they can wreak havoc in our society and in our elections. And I'm concerned that even after 18 months of study, we are still only scratching the surface when it comes to Russia's information warfare.
Foreign ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, are holding their annual meeting in Singapore. They will tackle a range of security concerns, including territorial disputes in the South China Sea. The 10-nation group also hopes to strike a joint agreement with Russia on cybersecurity in the coming days. The draft of a document that discusses formalizing an agreement with Moscow is expected to be issued on Saturday at the close of the 4-day meeting. Host Singapore has called on the bloc to brace for external tumult such as rising protectionism. ASEAN ministers will also meet their counterparts from 10 dialogue members, including China, Japan, the United States and the European Union, in a post-ministerial meeting.
At least 3 people were killed in violence that swept through the Zimbabwe capital Harare yesterday. This came after an official announcement that the ruling ZANU-PF party had won the majority of seats in parliament. An announcement on who won the presidential race was delayed. Alan Buckner reports.
Soldiers fired live rounds, water cannon and tear gas at enraged protesters who feel they've been cheated out of victory by a rigged election. The scene of armored vehicles speeding through debris-ridden streets and soldiers beating unarmed protesters was a far cry from Monday's upbeat spectacle of millions of Zimbabweans voting peacefully in the election. It also sets back President Emmerson Mnangagwa's efforts to shed Zimbabwe of its pariah state status after decades of repression under Robert Mugabe. Mnangagwa blamed the opposition Movement for Democratic Change Party, or MDC.
We hold the party and its leadership responsible for any loss of life, injury, or damage to property that arise from these acts of political violence which they aided and abetted.
But a spokesman for the MDC said the Army's reaction to the disturbance was disproportionate and unjustified.
Today we saw the deployment of military tanks and firing of live ammunition on civilians for no apparent reason. Civilians are allowed to demand the respect of their rights in a lawful manner. Any disorder may be dealt with by the police, who are best trained for public order. Soldiers are trained to kill during war.
Meanwhile, European Union observers of Monday's election said there were several problems, including media bias, some degree of voter intimidation, and mistrust in the Electoral Commission. They also questioned the delay in releasing the presidential poll result, in which Mnangagwa and MDC leader Nelson Chamisa are the leading candidates.
Look, it should be important that there will be a traceability of the results. The longer it lasts to count, the more lack of credibility comes up.
Zimbabwe authorities say troops will remain in the capital until the situation is over. Alan Brooknia, TVB News.
And still ahead tonight. The Ombudsman launches an investigation into the mandatory window inspection scheme. A call on the government to better protect Hong Kong's biodiversity. And in Macau, a new typhoon warning system around the city.
不同年紀、不同階段，營養需要各有不同。良好免疫力之餘，要兼顧各方面嘅你，需要補充精力。50歲後需要茄紅素及其他營養素，幫助維持心臟健康。不同年紀，善傳都能為你度身訂造全面營養素，助你挑戰亞健康。善傳為你度身打造健康生活。
Police have confirmed an internal document was leaked online. The file contains exact locations in the Kowloon West region where video cameras will be placed to tackle traffic offences in a citywide trial that started yesterday. Maps and photos of more than a dozen locations have been circulating on the internet. Police are investigating if anyone violated rules by leaking the internal document. Yet the force stressed the document contains no confidential information or personal data.
More local firms are turning to technology for staff training. Of 100 companies that took part in a survey, 65% provided online training last year. A professional body of human resource management said virtual or augmented reality could mimic situations that are hard to simulate in real life. They cited training in the police force as an example.
When the people want to learn how to deal with a chaotic situation, people cannot imagine what chaotic situation is like unless they're able to see it. But we cannot create chaotic situation in a real life situation that often. By using VR, by using AR, we can provide the employee a very good touch and feel about the situation.
Next time you're in Macau, look out for loudspeakers that have been set up to blare out disaster prevention alerts if needed. 12 of these loudspeakers have been installed at 3 locations of higher altitudes, including Gear Lighthouse. Authorities said the system, set to go into operation this month, can cover places within a 2-kilometre radius of each of the installations. There will be speakers in low-lying areas too to give out storm warnings in Portuguese, English and Chinese.
Thanks for watching. Have a very good night.